Thank you. I'm very honored and pleased to be here. I just want to say, I'm an American coming here, and that has several implications that I want to stress. I don't want to concede them. I want to stress them. The first point is that I'm very happy to spend 3 days seeing some of Israel for the first time. When you hear, this is not my subject today, but this is the kind of thing that I'm interested in. You hear in the United States, illegal settlement. It's a very different thing to come over the hill in the car and to see the town and see the trees that have been planted and to drive through the town and have something to eat and see a store. I mean, it puts you're seeing what's real there instead of the illegal settlement and many other words we can think of that stand to represent something but are not the thing itself. And so I'm very appreciative to Boaz to have given me a whirlwind tour, meeting a whole bunch of people and getting out through the country in a way that I've not done before. Some other things about my being an American. It means I'm looking at these issues from a certain point of detachment. A certain point is from the other side of a great big ocean. It's also from the other side of a language divide. I do not read Arabic. I do not read Hebrew. So I'm getting it from sources that are in translation. All such study, all such consideration and reading is a matter of interpretation. When I read ancient Greek, I'm reading the language, but I'm still doing a process complex of putting it into my own roadmap in my mind. And so all such reading is interpretation. And and the process of translation is an interpretation, and reading the translation is an interpretation. And that's the perspective that I'm coming at with this. I welcome and hope, I'm really glad of this small meeting here because I welcome your challenges on this. I truly want to understand this issue the best way I can. And so I don't think of any challenges as any kind of a confrontation or problem. If you can correct me on something, I look at this with the greatest gratitude. I take a comparative focus to these issues. And my PhD is in ancient Greek. I did my first 2 books on Solon of Athens, an ancient lawgiver, and the figures of the lawgivers in early Greece, pre-classical Greece. But I'm interested comparatively in issues of law, in issues of social organization, and in issues of war, as they reflect in many other periods of history. I do think that comparative history is valid. I think that if we study, for example, the Japanese experiences in World War II, this says something universal about human beings everywhere that can be used comparatively with other events. The particulars are all different. The language is different. We all know that there are humongous complexities and problems with this, but that doesn't mean it is invalid to do this. And so I've completed a book which is in press at Princeton, doing exactly that, 7 chapters on 7 events from history, attempting to extrapolate the nature of victory and the will to fight as a comparative in these 7 different events. I'm also, as an American, an intense admirer of Israel, and I'm not going to hide that. In my days of driving around here, my few days of driving around, have only strengthened that, for reasons I'd be glad to tell you. My admiration is not because you are a Jewish state. I'm saying you and referring to the state of Israel. My admiration is not because you are a Jewish state, but rather because you're a state that fulfills, from what I can see, the basic requirements of a proper government, which is which as discovered during the European Enlightenment, were to protect the rights of its citizens under the rule of law. You all know that you could find problems in your administration of this. I could find many problems in the American administration of this, right? But the principal attempt to do it is there, and it is obvious when you simply walk down the street and look. And the prosperity that has followed in Israel, as for the United States, is a consequence of that, in my opinion. But of course, the dominant reaction to Israel among its neighbors, and the reaction that's defined the basic thrust of the events since 1948, has been exactly the opposite of admiration, to put it mildly. And this is, of course, something that you have a much closer relationship to than I do. The dominant reaction has been a jihad against the Jews. And I submit that it's because the Jews have refused to accept the status of dhimmis, or humiliated, subjugated peoples, as required by the Koran, and as enunciated by a whole series of thinkers since. Sheikh Mohammed Ibrahim al-Mahdi, this is the kind of quote that I see one as an American, you have many more of them, I'm sure, said in a sermon in 2001 from the Gaza, quote, "We welcome, as we did in the past, any Jew who wants to live in this land as a dhimmi," unquote. That means as a second-class citizen under Islamic law. And until that point, he maintains, in his interpretation of the world, war is a duty for every Muslim, personal duty. Thus, there is, and from my perspective, a huge motivation for attacks against Israel from the neighbors that surround you. Whatever the answer to that is, a permanent solution will not be found until that motivation is confronted and ended. Whatever that takes is another subject. I think that Israel's complex problems with its neighbors should be understood in context with a broader movement in the world today, a movement that combines ambitions for political power with Islam. This movement has physical and intellectual aspects. Its political programs are manifestations of its intellectual positions and its religious motivations. This movement transcends national and ethnic ties, although it's close, of course, conditioned by those factors, deeply conditioned by those factors. It serves as a background motivation for action in various cultural contexts. Some people accepted strictures as a matter of religious duty. Others, I think, leverage its energies for pragmatic purposes to keep their own power, etc. In every guise, it has a clear aim, the establishment of Islamic law by political force. Sheikh al-Mahdi continued, the quote I just gave you earlier, quote, "The rule in this land and in all Muslim countries must be the rule of Allah," unquote. And that is his non-negotiable point of principle. Now this movement, and this is going to be part of the controversy, I'm sure, despite many complexities and internal divisions and many cultural distinctions, is, I maintain, a single movement. It is best named as Islamic Totalitarianism. And this, I submit, implies three things. So here's my basic explanation for this terminology. First off, it aims for political power that is totalitarian. By totalitarian, I mean the total. Total state was the word that came out of its Italian origins. And it aims for political power that is total, refers to any regime with unlimited power over its citizens in every sphere of life that assumes the right to control its citizens' lives. It is, to look at it another way, a certain moral code given political force. No area of life, on principle, is exempt from its control. If you have any rights under such a regime, they are given to you by permission, not by right. Strictly speaking, there are permissions and not rights. Now, second, the reason for this title is this form of totalitarianism, the specific form of totalitarianism, elevates religious law into a mandatory ideological doctrine. This doctrine allows the government to control every sphere of life. It merges religious institutions and doctrines with political practices, again in complex ways that vary with the particular situation. But the basic idea, I think, is there. And most of all, it imposes some form of censorship, limiting what people may say or write. It is the establishment of the ideological state. A state with a certain accepted ideological doctrine that admits to no partners and no competition, and with the physical means to enforce the accepted doctrines. And the third point about totalitarians to make here is that they attain and maintain their ends by force, whether through physical conquest or by internal subversion. They enforce its doctrine. Police and military enforce censorship and promote propaganda. The phenomenon of religious totalitarianism is both physical and intellectual in nature. It involves the physical suppression as well as control of intellectual aspects of a nation. This is why it's an ideological state. And this is a two-pronged struggle. In other words, the totalitarian regime is in a process of constant struggle to maintain itself over the population. It's a two-pronged struggle for ideological and physical dominance. Now, for the Islamic totalitarians, again from the perspective of this American, a central concept here is jihad, the central and dominant meaning of which is war for the maintenance and expansion of Islamic rule.